Okay. Hi, everyone. On behalf of VMUG, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, Licensing VMware Cloud Foundation 9, presented by Sehjung and Morry Katz. You can go to the next slide. If this is your first VMUG event, welcome. We're glad to have you. VMUG's an independent, customer-led organization, and we want to maximize your use of VMware and partner solutions through knowledge sharing, training, collaboration, and events like this webcast today. Before we begin, I have some housekeeping items to go over. First, we encourage everyone to get involved and connected to a local community near you at my.vmug.com. Second, all questions will need to be entered into the Q&A function on the side. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentations, and they'll answer them live and in writing. And third, today's webcast is being recorded, and it will be available to you in a wrap-up email and on VMUG's YouTube channel in the days following. On this next slide, you'll see a QR code to take you to all future VMUG webcasts. You can also find this at my.vmug.com. And in the spirit of events and collaboration, Explore is happening next month. I'm going to go next slide. Yep. And we hope to see you there. VMUG is a platinum sponsor this year. And if you can't join us in Las Vegas, next slide, you'll be able to come. We're coming maybe to a city near you. So check out those opportunities as well. All right, let's get started. Sehjung, I'll now hand it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you to the VMUG members. Thanks for staying with us through all the changes, and thanks for your patience. We are definitely trying to simplify things, and you'll hear about licensing today, where we have simplified licensing and made things a lot easier. So also, I wanted to say all the presenters on the call today really value the insight that the VMUG members bring. A lot of you are customers as well, and we appreciate the talent and the dedication that you bring to VMUG. And definitely Broadcom, and we are committed to the VMUG relationship. So on the call, we also have Morry, who's going to present, and myself. And then we also have Michael Curnutt, who will help also answer questions, as well as Kyle Gleed from Techno Marketing. Michael's from Product Management. And then we also want to thank Simon Momber, who helps organize all of our Broadcom VMUG interactions as well. So thanks, Erica. We'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about the value and the benefits of VCF9 licensing and how simplified it is. And we're going to go into some licensing details, and Morry's going to go into some of the different scenarios that you as a customer will have, or your end customer will have. And then also, what the steps are to get to VCF9 licensing. And one of the key challenges that, our product management team on the call, Morry and Michael and team, have been looking at pre-VCF9 was there was a lot of manual steps, and there's a lot of complexity in terms of just licensing the environment. Before VMware, we had multiple different business units, and they're all working kind of independently towards providing the best IT infrastructure. But because they were a different business unit, licenses were kind of complicated because each different business unit had their own set of license keys that had to be installed, and you had to go into each different device or infrastructure to go in to license it. So that's definitely something that the product management team looked at in what you're going to see soon. And then also because of the different silos, so whether it's the networking team that was looking at the NSX part, or the operations team that was looking at, let's say, ARIA operations or vRealize operations at the time, there's a lot of different keys. And then we also used to have bundles, so that way some things were bundled together, and just a lot of complexity. So that's something that the team looked at, and how can we reinvent licensing by looking at what else is out there in terms of the software and SaaS world. Next. So in VCF 9.0, there's unified management. So using VCF operations, or VMware Cloud Foundation operations, which progressed from ARIA operations from before, that's going to be the center point of all your licensing. VCF operations also does other things too, things like your password rotations across your VCF infrastructure, as well as, your certificates, keeping those maintained, as well as just an overall view of what's happening in your VMware Cloud Foundation private cloud infrastructure. So with one view of that license, the operations is a lot more simplified. Rather than having a separate license key for every component in your infrastructure in VCF 9.0, you're going to have a single license file. And in the slides coming forward, you'll see more details about that. But then that single license file will be will have all the licenses that VCF operations looks at. And then, of course, as a customer, especially a large global customer, you might have more than one VCF operations. So each of the different VCF operations would have a license file. So using the support portal, there's a portion of it called the Business Services Console, where you can actually allocate which of your licenses would go to that single license file. And then, depending on, let's say if you have some licenses in the Americas versus a different set of licenses in Asia, for example, you could split them that way from the portal and then pull it down. And Morry will go into a lot more details about how that's done. So with this large enterprise view, it's one of the key things that simplifies VCF 9.0. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So some of the key things you're going to be able to see are, what licenses do I own? So you have that visibility, as well as what's actually being used. So you might have licenses that are not being consumed at the moment, but you have that visibility. And also, as we're moving from a perpetual type of licensing over to a subscription licensing, you'll also know when they expire as well. So you have that visibility across your entire infrastructure. And then this will make it a lot easier to manage everything. Also, one other key thing is when you, in the past, had to split or move licenses from one section to another section of your infrastructure, now with a single license file and the view from VCF operations, it's a dynamic license adjustment in terms of if you create some infrastructure and that needs licensing, it'll just use the licensing that you have available. Or if you turn off infrastructure, that licensing gets adjusted too. So now that there's not all the numerous licenses you have to maintain, it's going to be a lot easier. So we can go to the next slide. So as mentioned before, so if you look on the left side, this is kind of what you had before. So maybe all your ESX hosts, you had one set of licenses, and then also if you purchase more licenses later in the next budget cycle, for example, you would have a different set of licenses. So you have multiple different licenses you have to manage, and then you had a different license for vSAN, you had a different license for VCF operations or NSX. So those were all different licenses that you had to manage. But now on the right side, basically we simplified that in VCF 9.0, where you just have that one license file, and you have a license file for the core, for the infrastructure, as well as for the TIBs, which is for the storage. And one other key thing is you can also look at your older licenses as well. So your license keys, you can also view within VCF operations to do that too. And then the key thing is the Business Services Console. So some of the key challenges that we're solving, and just to go into a little bit more detail, so the large number of keys we talked about, and that's solved with the one license file, and that definitely makes it easier. The other one was, because before with the different license keys, you would have to go into one vCenter to see what licenses were there for those ESX hosts. Then if you wanted to see the licenses in another vCenter, you had to manually go over to that one and log into that one and see that. So with the unified view with VCF operations, you get the entire view of all your licenses in the infrastructure. You don't have to go into each vCenter at a time. And then because of the licenses, there's just so numerous licenses, we have customers with thousands of licenses even. People had to maintain spreadsheets to track these. And then it was very easy to underutilize the licenses a company may have because you just lose track of them. So here with VCF 9.0, our engineering team and product management team, they've designed it so that way you get a better view of that. So that way you know exactly what's not being used. So you can make sure that you fully utilize the licenses that you have. Another complication that we had before was, with major release upgrades. So when you went from vSphere 7 to vSphere 8, for example, you had to get new license keys. So that even if you had a new license key for the new subscription for 3 years, for example, you also had to get swap that out to get the license key to run latest version of vSphere. So in VCF 9.0, there's no license key upgrade required from, let's say, vSphere 8 to vSphere 9. So that just makes it a lot easier as you're deploying your infrastructure. So you don't have to worry about the major software release for the next time to have to swap out your keys to get to the next version. And then also another complexity was just because you would have to split licenses. For example, let's say you bought 100 licenses. In the past, you would split maybe 50 in one location, 50 in another location. But then if you're merging locations or if one section's growing, then you have to sort of manually keep track of making sure that 50 become more than 50 to be compliant with licensing. So now with VCF 9.0, in terms of flexibility, as you're scaling your infrastructure, that visibility is going to be there. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Morry, who will go into a lot more details of the VCF 9.0 licensing. Thanks.
So there are four primary changes that we'll see that I'm going to recap from what Sehjung said. The first is that customers use VCF operations to license their entire environment. So we basically moved up from managing license keys at the vCenter by vCenter basis for hosts, for example, to having everything in VCF ops across multiple vCenters. We have a layer above that in the business services console that lets you see across multiple VCF operations if you have a large environment and need more than one VCF operations. The licenses are then taken in business services console, and as Sehjung said, you allocate them to different VCF operations instances if you have more than one. And there is a requirement that license usage be reported back to Broadcom through this infrastructure at least once every 180 days. And I'm going to go through in a little bit of detail how that's accomplished, because I know this is an audience that likes to get down and dirty and understand just how that system works and what you're going to need to do. I'm going to do this explanation by way of an example, but I'll say a few words about variations as we go along. So in the example we're looking at, the customers purchased a single subscription of VCF for 300 cores. If, for example, and you're going to manage those cores through to your VCF ops, but imagine instead that you didn't buy all these at once, and instead you had 3 separate subscriptions for 100 cores each. Those would all pool together in the business services console, and you would have managed those 300 cores that you have identically to if you had made a single purchase for 300 cores. So one of the first values we see here is that the business services console is not forcing you to manage purchase by purchase, but you're managing based on the amount of capacity you as a customer own. So the first step in getting licensed to VCF operations after you go into the business services console and say, I want this VCF subscription, or my quantity of 300 cores from the VCF subscription to be added to this VCF ops, is to get that information conveyed to the VCF operations. So how is that accomplished? And in fact, here you'll just see that we're actually going to be adding 256 cores of the total of the 300 and leaving some remaining for some other use. But the way this is accomplished is through a two-step process. The first step is that the VCF operations is registered with the business services console. We have two mechanisms in which you can run, or modes in which you can run this communication. You can be connected, everything's going to happen over the wire automatically, or you can be disconnected and do it with file transfer. So you perform this registration. I'm first going to talk through the connected mode. So you'll pass the information from one to the other in a portal. And after that connection is established, you then get a secure license file downloaded to the VCF operations. In a disconnected mode, this is primarily targeted for air-gapped networks where you can't have any direct network connectivity. You'd go to the VCF operations, you'd download a registration file from VCF operations. You'd then go into the business services console and you'd upload that registration file. To get the information from the business services console, the VCF operations, you take the next step, you download that secure license file and you upload it into VCF operations. In both of these, there's a sneaker net. You might be putting this on a USB stick. It depends on how you do things. You might put it on a laptop that you bring and log into a different network. It all depends on how you're doing your air-gapped environments. So now that you've got these licenses available in VCF operations, you assign some or all of the licenses you have in a VCF operations to each individual vCenter. So in this case, we're only looking at a single license for VCF. So we assign that VCF license from VCF Ops 1 in that to vCenter. That vCenter, let's imagine it had two hosts connecting to it. So those first two hosts, each of 128 cores, report up into the vCenter. And we're now using all 256 cores of licenses that were available in this VCF Ops. If someone attempted to add a third host to this vCenter, it wouldn't be able to be licensed because there are no more cores available. So if this is a brand new host, it would come in evaluation mode, much as you're familiar with from previous releases of VMware software, 8.x, 7.x, etc. And you now have 90 days of evaluation mode. And within those 90 days, you either need to remove that host or bring more licenses to this VCF Ops. Let's imagine this is a very large customer environment. So there are two VCF Ops. And so we're going to take the remaining 44 VCF cores and we're going to add those to VCF Ops 2. Let me stop just a minute and tell you that how did we get these 256 cores to Ops 1 and the 44 cores to Ops 2? In the business services console, you have the ability to partition across multiple license instances. So you can say, take these 300 cores. I want you to split off 256 here, 44 there. It's in some sense akin to license key splitting. So you split those apart. And so now we have two things, one which we assign to VCF Ops 1, the second we assign to VCF Ops 2. We register the VCF Ops 2 in the same fashion as we did VCF Ops 1 with the business services console. It could be connected or disconnected. You don't have to have all of your VCs running in the same mode. You might have some air-gapped networks that run some VCs and some in your core data center that can run connected. Very similarly, we then assign this license for VCF to this vCenter, this second vCenter. It has a single host. That host has 36 cores. And so you can see that you're now using 36 of the 44 available cores on VCF Ops 2. In identical fashion to host 3, if you tried to add host 5 to this VCF Ops 2, you would only have 8 available cores. This host has 128. And so again, it couldn't be licensed. With that license, it would come in evaluation mode. I spoke a bit earlier to usage. One of the requirements of the VCF9 is that usage be reported back to Broadcom at least once every 128 days. How is this accomplished? Again, we have both connected and disconnected mode. In connected mode, the usage is uploaded regularly on its own. Every day, the usage is going to be coming up to the business services console. The license update is under the control of the customer. Some customers, for example, may want to have this license update happen during a maintenance window late in the wee hours of Sunday morning, once a week, for example. It's completely up to you. There's a single button click that causes that license file to be updated with any new information that's changed in the cloud since the last time it was sent down. This also acts as a confirmation that the business services console has received the license usage that was uploaded. So the requirement is not only that the data come up every 180 days, but you also need to send down a new license file. That's how the VCF operations knows that that usage has gotten to the cloud. The 180 days starts over again once you generate this new license file and it's communicated into VCF Ops. For disconnected mode, you're going to do this very similarly to how we did the initial registration. You download the usage file from the VCF Ops. You upload it into the business services console. You download a new license file from the business services console, and you upload it into the VCF Ops. You perform this operation for each of your VCF Ops separately. So you need to get the usage from there and download it here, the license file. As you can see, there's much less operational overhead if you run in connected mode. Not every customer can, but we strongly encourage people whenever possible to use connected mode. It is not only much simpler, but there are information up in the business services console about your license usage, and there's analytics up there. And so being in connected mode means that your license usage is getting up there daily, and that keeps the information refreshed in this console so that you can track your usage across your entire enterprise on a day-by-day basis. Okay, what happens if the usage doesn't get updated and you don't download a new license file? So I mentioned that this needs to happen every 180 days. 30 days before the 180 days, you'll start getting warnings showing up in VCF operations, vCenter, and the business services console to remind you that you need to complete that 180-day update. If you don't accomplish that within 180 days, you'll then see an error message appear in the consoles that says you failed to meet the 180-day requirement. There is a 90-day grace period before stronger enforcement is taken. If you don't complete this within 180 plus 90 days, 270, you will get the same enforcement that you would have seen in VCF 8, for example, with hosts if a license key expired. So your host will disconnect from your management plane. You'll be unable to do various configuration operations. The existing workloads continue to run, so they're not proactively stopped by the system. You can't start any new workloads. You can't, if you have an expired environment, you can recover fairly simply by just uploading a usage file information, downloading a new license file. And there's very similar behavior if your subscription expires. So at least for the license usage, you don't really want to have this enforcement kick off. So do update that information every 180 days. I've already mentioned the connected and disconnected modes. This is a customer choice again. So the value of connected is you're getting automated updates and consumption is single click. With disconnected, all of your updates are manual. So let me do a brief side-by-side comparison of how things worked before 9.0 and now how things work with the new 9.0 licensing. So as Sehjung mentioned at the beginning, with 8.x license keys, for example, you had a separate key per component. There were about 12 keys you were managing for VCF. With 9.0, you have a single license file, and you don't have to some of the same overhead when you make multiple purchases or at renewal, because you're managing to capacity in the business services console, not to individual purchases. In previous to 9.0, you had different license keys for each major version. So when you upgraded across major version boundaries, you had to go in and redo all of your licensing. For vSphere, for example, that meant bringing in the license keys and assigning the correct key to each of your hosts across a large environment. That could be a relatively large task. In starting with 9, there is no version dependence on the licenses. Once you set up what license you want to entitle what assets in your environment, when it goes from 9 to 10, from 10 to 11, etc., none of that needs to be updated. When you renew your subscription, nothing needs to be changed. It just finds out about the new expiration date for your extended subscription. There is a new requirement, pardon me, in 9 to to update license usage to the cloud every 180 days. As Sehjung mentioned, the support portal is where you went for your license keys in previous releases. You went into the licensing section of the support portal. The business services console is a new part of the support portal. It happens to have its own URL in case you want to bookmark a shortcut, but it is part of the support portal. You can get there and clicking in various places in the support portal, just like you got to the licensing section in the support portal by clicking on licenses. The evaluation period has been extended from 60 to 90 days. There are some places in add-ons that are different. The add-ons were all with license keys for those add-ons before 9.0. In 9.0, PAFE and vSAN have adopted the VCF licensing at this point, and they're done in the way I described previously. A few of the add-ons still use license keys. This is a rolling thunder over time. More things will start to use the v9 licensing, but you can see that a number of things are still using license keys in 9.0 from an add-on standpoint. And VMware Live Recovery remains SaaS. Michael, if you wouldn't mind doing this one slide, I'm going to get a quick drink of water so I don't sound like I sound.
And thank you so much, Morry. So to recap everything that Morry has said and what Sehjung has said, in general, the intent is that VCF v9 makes licensing easier. Now, I know, like, hey, what about the usage data? Doesn't that add, and the registration process, that adds complexity? We have weighed that with the improvements of not needing to manage across a bunch of license keys, reducing that the multiplying effect of the license keys, as well as making it easier to manage at scale. And what we have seen is that overall reduces your total time involved in licensing, as well as providing you the insights you need. Additionally, I want to make sure everyone is aware before you try to go to v9, you do need VCF operations to be able to license your environment. We have moved the licensing operations from vCenter to VCF operations. That's to support making this easier, but it is a change. I know change comes with a cost, time impact. So, and then again, while we have made it easier, there is this new need to be able to provide usage every 180 days. That is part of the subscription-based licensing model, which I know there's been some feedback on via chat, but this is part of the new requirement. It is meant to also benefit you, though, in that you will see what your usage data is over time for your VCF operations, and you will be able to see that and make decisions and project out where that usage is going to be. So with that, we have some more links for you.
Thanks, Michael. If you can go through it or I'll pick up. I
Go ahead, Morry. I'm going to go back to answering some questions.
It sounded like a frog for a second there. So we do, as Michael said, have a large number of references available. We're making this list available to VMUG. It will be in the recording with clickable links, but I just want to tell you a little bit about what's out there. There is a full new documentation set for VCF 9. It has a fairly extensive section on licensing. Well, it's not the main topic here. I'll just let you know one of the changes in documentation between previous releases and 9 is there used to be documentation sets for every separate component. So you'd have to go and find the NSX licensing or the vRealize licensing or vSphere, etc., and for all the other components as well, not only for licensing, but for how those things worked. That's all been consolidated into a single book of VCF 9 now, and there's a licensing section in there that covers all aspects of licensing across all components. So you're getting a consolidated view of documentation for VCF. Sehjung and Kyle wrote a wonderful blog that goes over how licensing works at a high level. So it's basically a couple page that highlights much of what we talked about here today and a few other things in that. As with any release, there are release notes for VCF 9. They include some information on licensing as well. I know that I find it easier to learn a lot of times by watching a quick couple-minute video than by reading pages of documentation. I'm probably not the only person like that. So we've created 4 short videos, less than 5 minutes each, on different aspects of the business services console and licensing, where you can actually see, whereas I showed diagrams of how this all works, this shows you actually walking through the various UIs, clicking on them, and explanations of how that's working. As with all releases and products in Broadcom, there is an SPD that describes the various legal considerations, what you're entitled to as a customer. So there is one for VCF you can look at if you're looking for information on there. We have a VCF9 FAQ that also includes answers to some commonly asked questions about licensing. There remain websites on Cloud Foundation and vSphere Foundation. The licensing applies to both of them. Probably should have said that somewhere along the way because we kept talking about VCF. But vSphere Foundation is done the exact same way, and you can find more information on those offers on the Broadcom site. There support information on the Broadcom support page. And then there's also documentation on the APIs for VCF operations. So for example, you can go in and that button click I described where you update your license. If you like to hack scripts, you can make some API calls. You could automate that, for example, as opposed to pushing the button with a human being. There also is documentation on the APIs for the Business Services Console. In case anybody here is part of a VCSP, you'd be interested in those potentially. So with that, that's sort of the main part of the presentation today, but I'm sure if this one's like any others, there are a bunch of questions that Michael's been feverishly answering and probably some that are good for us to address verbally. So Michael, if you'd like to share those and one of us will answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, let me start by answering one that I think has been fairly common about offline and air-gapped environments. There is a number of questions we'll answer, but I'll start with this one. So Morry addressed this real time. I'll kind of reaffirm what he said. If you have an air-gapped environment, you can still do licensing. You do not have to be connected, nor do you need special approval to be disconnected. When you go to VCF operations, you will see a path, a button for disconnected, and you get a file instead of being taken to our portal where you can upload the file separately from a different computer or from somewhere where you actually have connection to vcf.broadcom.com. There is still a requirement to provide usage every 180 days and download a new license file to confirm that. The process is relatively straightforward, and you don't need to do it for every single vCenter or every single host. You just need to do it once per ops instance every 180 days minimally. There were some questions indicating classified environments, and so let me speak kind of broad strokes about classified environments. Different people mean different things when they say that. If you are working with a Department of Defense entity, whether it be US Department of Defense or another country, there is generally special approval guidelines for Department of Defense sites that have special licensing policies. Please talk to your account team and seller about those things, but they're really only for Department of Defense. Otherwise, disconnected is going to be your best path if you're not part of the Department of Defense agency or organization. There was another question that Morry, if you could help speak to around, I know this is a harder one, but how will the download token and downloads work for VMUG users? What guidance could you give them right now around downloads and download tokens?
Okay, so first let me just say a little about how it works for direct customers, and then I'll move on to those of you who are members of VMEC Advantage and have passed a certification exam, who've been giving subscriptions to VCF or vSphere or VVF, vSphere Foundation by Broadcom. So for the for any customer who's purchased, they get a subscription. They have access to the download site for Broadcom. So you go in there, you go to the VCF section of the download, you download the installer, you can also download all the individual components. You go and install those. The vSphere, the VCF installer requires a software download token in addition. That is used to download some incremental information that's needed to perform installations and upgrades in the consolidated manner done by the installer. That token is also downloadable from the support portal. And so once you set all that up, you run the install, now everything goes and installs for you. For VMUG users, we currently have enabled the releases prior to version 9. The version 9 support is work in progress. Broadcom's feverishly working to get that out. You cannot download and install it all today. You do have access to the software download site. You don't have a license yet. You could install the individual components if you so chose from the software download, but to get the full VCF in the way you probably want it, you need the VCF installer. There isn't the license or the software download token enabled yet. So keep your ears open. We'll definitely put out word when everything's available. But unfortunately, probably your best bet is to wait a little while right now to move to VCF 9. That installer is also used for upgrades. Many of the people it's applied to probably already have a home lab and they'll want to upgrade as opposed to fresh install. So that was a long way of saying it's all there for customers, but unfortunately it's going to be a little while still before we enable it all for people in VMUG Advantage who've passed a certification exam.
Awesome. Thank you, Morry. So a couple of questions I wanted to answer live for folks. An anonymous attendee asked, are you able to apply RBAC to the partitions to control what VCF environments get with the license file? There are a couple of ways that I could interpret this question, so let me speak broadly to how RBAC works and partitioning licenses. So as you all probably know, with V8 licenses, there's a concept of folders. I can split my V8 license keys, I can put those in folders, and I can apply different RBAC for those different folders. With VCF v9, we have a new concept called a tenant in the cloud. So if you go to vcf.broadcom.com today, and literally just today, it just released this morning, you will see a tenant management feature where you can create tenants. Those tenants operate similar to how a folder would have operated in the past. You can split your v9 licenses up, and you can put different licenses into those different tenants and add different users to those different tenants. And those users, if they are a site member and not a site admin, will only be able to use that tenant, only be able to register VCF ops in that tenant, only be able to select licenses in that tenant. And that way you can control access to those different licenses or partitions, so to speak, in that way. Now, that you don't have to go through all of that process. Another way is you can work with your individual VI admins. If you're acting as a license admin, you can work with a different VI admin, have them provide you with a VCF ops registration file. You can register it, you can control what license they get, give them back a license file, and then once you're registered as disconnected, they can switch to a connected mode. Once you have been set up in connected mode, you can just use the VCF ops as connected. You'll only be able to use those licenses given to that ops instance. That VI admin won't be able to see or access the other licenses, but that VCF ops will be able to continue to get maintained. So hopefully I answered that question. If there are any other questions about RBAC, please ask them. But tenant management was fortuitously just released this morning. which gives you that RBAC access. Let me see what other questions we have. Okay, there's a few questions about HCX here. I'm gonna see if I can capture this. Does VMware Cloud Director availability, will it get replaced with HCX? So I think this is one, I think Anke asked that question. There might have been another one from another person. This might be one that we need to follow up offline and try to get you an answer from an HCX owner. I am familiar with VCD. I don't know. This is the first I've heard it asked in the context of HCX. So I'll see if I can circle back with the HCX owner for follow up. You can also reach out to support if we don't have a mechanism for me to get back to you on that. So unless more you happen to know, or Sehjung.
Actually, I think for VCD, a lot of the capabilities are going into VCF automation. So in terms of the workflows before 9, VCD was involved, but then in 9.0 and after, it'll be with automation.
Right. Okay, that's a good point. I don't know if there was something specific about HCX though, that or VCD availability. So, but I can echo Sehjung's statement that a lot of that functionality has been moved into, or is now available in VCFA, which is licensed through VCF. So there's been a lot of questions about VCF Edge. So if you look at the answered questions list, I put a link to the SPD. It's a program specific documentation, or specific program documentation, I think it's called. That has the legal minutia, I guess you could say, of some of the Edge questions. The Edge minimum core count per host is 8. VCF and VVF minimum core count per host is 16 per physical CPU. For both, it's per physical CPU. There is a maximum assignment allowed to an Edge site of 256 cores for Edge. There's no maximum assignment limit with VCF. That Edge assignment limit is not enforced in the software. It is something that you'll need to keep track of because we don't know if you're using multiple Edge sites within one vCenter or how that's spread across. So it's up to you to maintain or track that. I don't know if there are purchase limits related to Edge. So unfortunately, you would need to talk to your account manager. I'm sorry, I just don't have that answer. And then I see the question, can we buy VCF Edge without VCF? Again, Andre, I'm not 100% sure about that answer. My understanding is you can buy VCF Edge without VCF, but the only person who can answer that for sure is the seller. So I really do apologize. I'm not trying to avoid the question. I just don't know for sure. I will answer a related question. There are no limitations around deploying VCF Edge and VCF in the same VCF operations environment. One license file can contain both products. Both can go into the same environment. There is a limitation in V9 where you will not be able to assign both to the same vCenter. You'll need to be either VCF or VCF Edge or VVF for a given vCenter. But that would be the only limitation there. So hopefully I answered everyone's questions about Edge. If I missed any, please post some more online. Tim, you answered, you asked, what happens if we go over? Morry, so I'm not the only one talking here. Do you want to speak to license enforcement around quantity?
So the short answer is you can't go over. As I mentioned when we were walking through the slides, if you go to add new host, for example, and you don't have enough cores to license those assigned to that vCenter, that host will come in an evaluation mode. And at the end of 90 days, if you haven't licensed it with a valid license, that host will then be disconnected from the vCenter and will go into an enforcement mode. So, you really, and if you try to assign a license to a vCenter that already has more hosts connected, then can be licensed with that license, all the hosts will come in an evaluation mode. So there really isn't a way that you can use more than you purchased. It's not like license keys where there are various different ways because there wasn't centralized visibility that you could get yourself inadvertently into the position of using more than you purchased. One of the goals here is to give complete visibility across the enterprise within a VCF ops for that section of your environment, what you have, what you're using, and to be able to help you stay in compliance with what you purchased.
Awesome. Thank you, Morry. And Morry mentioned it during this presentation, but I will echo it again. Evaluation has been increased from 60 days to 90 days. So you have 90 days. If you add a host and you don't have enough cores to cover it, you have 90 days to either replace, a previous host, remove a previous host from your environment, or to increase the core count in the license. So an extra 30 days than you had before. Andre asked a question that Sehjung, I'm hoping you have an answer for. If you don't, then unfortunately, I don't think anyone on this call will. Andre wants to know if we have a list of resellers or distributors, intermediaries based off of region. We're currently reviewing potential partners. Do you have any?
Yes.
Do we have any find a reseller type?
Yeah,
resources?
I have the link. Yeah, I'll put it in the answer. I'll get it.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you, Sehjung. All right. Anonymous attendee asked, do we know if V9 licenses are downgradable? We currently have an ELA, which is coming to an end in the next 6 months. If we purchase VCF 9 but need to delay the upgrade for a while, we'd be able to continue to run VCF 8. So when we did VCF 9 licensing, one of the decisions was we don't want licenses to be version specific anymore. Now, we've completely changed licenses. So there is a new format. So right now, you don't need to upgrade from V8 to V9, and you don't need to downgrade from V9 to V8. If you own VCF, you will be eligible to use V8 and V9. You just cannot overuse the total. The licensing terms are that you cannot overuse the total between those two from what you purchased. So if anonymous attendee, you want to use V8 and you buy VCF, just use V8. Download the V8 binaries, install them, continue to use the V8 license keys. And as long as they're still within support, you should be fine. You won't have any need. Hopefully over time, you'll decide to upgrade to V9. When you are ready to upgrade to V9, be sure to use the installer and use licenses from vcf.broadcom.com. And just ensure you're not overusing between V8 and V9 as you're ready to do that transition. So no more upgrades between V8 and V9.
So just to emphasize a little bit something Michael said there, when Broadcom transitioned to subscriptions, part of owning a subscription is that you're not buying a version. So the question was phrased in terms of I purchased VCF 9. That attendee didn't actually purchase VCF 9. They purchased a subscription to VCF. And that subscription entitles him to, or his employer, to use any version that's currently under support by Broadcom.
Yep. It's a good addition there. So Chris, actually, maybe I should not have selected Chris's question to answer live. That's one we should probably take offline, Chris. I don't know if there's a mechanism in which I can give you my email privately. The only thing I can offer, Chris, is to reach out to support, but your account, it's news to me that an account rep would not be willing to sell vSAN cores. I would need to look at your account to see if there was any limitation there. But I can tell you that we do still support vSAN add-on as an add-on. So just to confirm, this is for your enterprise account, I assume, not your VMUG account. And for your enterprise account, we absolutely do support vSAN as an add-on. this is for your VMUG account, then there would be no add-on support for VMUG members.
Yeah.
It's what you get with your VMUG membership.
Yeah, just some more details. It sounds like maybe the thing is it's an add-on to a VVF purchase or a VCF purchase. So in the past, there was a lot of a la carte components that we sold, including vSAN. But I think probably the conversation is about you would have to start with VVF or VCF and then do the vSAN add-on.
Yeah. All right. Can you unlicense one VCF deployment from one account and relicense it in another? Yes, it's a little painful, and I apologize for that. In VCF Ops, you can basically, it's called restart registration. When you register again, choose a new site, a new tenant. You'll go through the registration process again. You will need to delete the VCF Ops registration in the cloud as well. You register it again, it'll transfer the registration of that same ops instance. You'll select a new license, download it, and you'll need to reassign the licenses on-prem. There is documentation online about how to do that, and we'll consider ways to make that easier in the future to protect when mistakes are made. But right now, that is a manual process you would need to go through to do that relicense. So it's possible, just a little difficult to move to a new account.
We probably have time for like one more question, Michael, before we bring it home.
Yes. All right. I'll answer this last one. Is the license file a binary or a text file? It is, I think technically it's still considered a binary, but it's a text file. It is a JWT token. I'm not shy to tell people this. You can take it to a JWT decoder. You can copy the content, open the contents in a text file, view the contents. It's encoded, so you can't read it by default. But if you put it in a JWT decoder, you can see the contents. The only thing in there that you can't decode is, of course, the signature, which is there to validate the file. So, anyways, with that said, that's everything that we can answer for today. Thank you all very, very much for the great set of questions, and hopefully we were able to answer your questions effectively. And with that, I think we can hand it off to Erica to wrap us up.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so thank you, Sehjung, Morry, and Michael for taking that time to speak to us today. This was really robust and helpful. This webcast was recorded, and the recording will be available in an email following the webcast and on the VMUG YouTube channel in the coming days. As well, when you finish, when we close this out, you'll be sent to a short online survey, and this will let us know how today's session went, and this helps us provide new, fresh content for you guys. So thank you so much. And if you're looking to upgrade to a VMUG Advantage account, you can use that code community for 10% off. Thanks again for everyone joining, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.